Unit 2, Lesson 4, Part 2, Proportional Relationships and Equations. So I can write an equation in the form that equals y equals kx. So remember, when two letters are touching each other, that tells you to multiply. So y equals something times something else, to represent a proportional relationship described by a table or a story. In part 1, we talked a lot about tables, and we looked at tables and created those equations. Now I can write the constant of proportionality as an entry in a table. Okay, so again, we're back at that constant of proportionality. That means for 1. So if I'm looking back, it says activity 3 revised. So a baker uses 8 tablespoons of honey for every 10 cups of flour to make bread dough. Some days they bake bigger batches and some days they make smaller batches, but they always use the same ratio of honey to flour. So if F is the cups of flour needed and H is the tablespoons of honey, write an equation that relates F and H. So just to kind of remind you of where we were, we have to figure out what it is for 1. So we're going to start with the honey. So I'm going to divide by 8, and I'm going to divide by 8, and I got 1.25 cups of flour for 1 tablespoon of honey. And then from there, I can use that information to figure out everything else. So I can multiply by 16, and I'll get 20, multiply by 30. Remember, I'm multiplying 1.25 by 30. So, because that's my constant of proportionality. I get 37.5. So every time I'm multiplying 1.25 H. So it says if F is the cups of flour needed and H is the tablespoons of honey, write an equation that relates F and H. So I know that F is equal to 1.25 H. So I know that 1.25 times the tablespoons of honey, I will get the number of cups of flour I need. So how much flour is needed for 15 tablespoons of honey? So that's when I would go 1.25 times 15, because it's tablespoons of honey and honey is H. So 1.25 times 15, and I get flour is going to be 18.75. So I need 18.75 cups of flour, or 18 3/4 of a cup. So the next one says, a certain ceiling is made up of tiles. Every square meter of ceiling requires 10.75 tiles. Fill in the table with the missing values. So I know that it says every square meter of ceiling tiles is 10.75. So every time I'm going to multiply by that constant of proportionality. So I'm going to use my calculator. 10 times 10.75, and I get 107.5. So then I'm working the opposite way this time. So I know that I need to figure out what it is for 1 ceiling tile. So I'm going to divide by 10.75 and divide this side by 10.75. So 1 divided by 10.75 gives me a crazy number. And it's going to keep going. Okay, so I'm going to leave that number in my calculator and use that to figure out the next one. So times by 100. So remember, you left that crazy number in your calculator. So I'm just going to take that crazy number and multiply it by 100. And I get 9.3023, and it's going to keep going. So if I wanted to get A, I would multiply it by 10.75 times A every time, because that's my constant of proportionality. The next one says, on a flight from New York to London, an airplane travels at a constant speed. The equation relating the distance traveled, d, to the number of miles flying, t, is t equals 1 over 500. How long will it take the airplane to travel 800 miles? So I have t equals 1 over 500 d. So d is the distance. So I'm going to do t equals 1 over 500 times 800 over 1. So just so that I can put it in my calculator, so that's 800 over 500. Because remember, when you're multiplying fractions, you go straight across. So now in my calculator, I'm going to do 800 divided by 500. Because this line tells me to divide. So I get the time is equal to 1.6, and then it's hours, so hours. So it takes 1.6 hours for the plane to travel 800 miles. The next one says meters and centimeters. So again, I'm looking at those meters and centimeters, and it says, what is the constant of proportionality? So the constant of proportionality is 1 meter equals 100 centimeters, so it's 100. So every time I'm going to multiply by 100. All the way down the table, I'm going to multiply by 100. So 100 times x. Remember, you don't put an extra x as your multiplication symbol. So write an equation and let x represent the meters. So that's what this is. And y represent the centimeters. So the number of centimeters is equal to 100 times the meters. So now I'm working the other way. So it says I've got 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. So I could divide by 100. Or I can multiply by 1 over 100. So every time I'm multiplying by 100th, so 1 over 100. So what is the constant of proportionality? 1 over 100. Write an equation that represents the meters. Let x represent the meters, and let y represent the centimeters. So x equals 100 y. So I multiply 1/100th times y, so the centimeters, and I'm going to get the meters. So now you're at your cool down. So again, we've drawn all over our keynote today. So you need to make sure that you're drawing all over your cool down. I need you to go ahead, and if you need extra practice, go to Khan Academy. If you want to see Mr. Morgan's help video where he walks you through it, it's on Canvas. You can email a study buddy, or you can set up an appointment with me, and I'll be glad to walk through each problem with you and your cool down.